Hi, everybody. Pleasure to give this talk to you today. My name is Kamil Gorski. I'm the CEO and co-founder at TokenGuard. And today we're going to discuss how cross-chain traffic actually boosts web3 ecosystems and dApp, especially DeFi protocols. And we're going to discuss it on an example of real-life data coming from multiple protocols. And we're going to compare some of the Web3 ecosystems in terms of cross-chain traffic coming to these ecosystems. But before we start, I would like to just have one important question. So how many of you here are builders, like Web3 builders? Okay. Are there any on-chain applications, protocols? Cool. Wonderful. Great. Okay, so a small introduction about myself. So my name is Kamil. I started coding pretty early, being around 9 years old. I did a lot of code creation, but most importantly, I think exploits, writing buffer overflow exploits in C and assembler for very old Apache servers and breaking into some random stuff here in Poland at the time. And then in 2018, I decided to get into blockchain, and I'm working in this industry since 2018. We started with doing manual and automated smart contract audits for Web3 dApps and protocols. Afterwards, we founded TokenGuard as an automated solution for security measurement. However, because of the 2022 crypto crash, we decided to pivot. And what we're doing now is basically analysis of wallets activity and influence of this wallet's activity on dApp and protocol revenue and conversion. And I think that discussing cross-chain is very important for this matter. So let's get started. So first of all, how many of you has ever used a bridge? Ah, awesome, awesome. Was it an easy experience? Yeah, as usual in Web3. Great. So basically what bridging is, and we need to remind ourselves what it actually is. So let's assume that we have two separate Web3 networks. First of them, network A, let's assume it's Ethereum. The second network, it can be anything. It can be EVM-based network. It can be WASM-based network. It doesn't really matter. So in order for these two separate networks to be able to communicate with each other, you need to have a third-party solution that will basically connect two different states of networks because these networks, they cannot communicate with each other out of the box. So basically, when you're sending out, assuming, let's say, 100 ETH to a network B, you need to firstly send it out to a smart contract deployed on a network A, and then you assume that this amount of 100 ETH is going to show up on network B in a separate smart contract deployed there. But what happens behind is that these 100 ETH has to somehow be transferred or at least abstractly communicated to the network B that this transfer was actually sent out. And there are two ways to achieve this, which we're going to discuss in a second. However, getting back to the bridging mechanism, when you send out this 100 ETH, these tokens are firstly locked up in the network A, in this case Ethereum, for further redemption, and they show up in the smart contract deployed on the network B, and you can redeem them there as a usually wrapped Ether. And of course, you can reverse the whole transaction, and once you reverse it, you basically burn those wrapped ETH tokens on network B, and you can unlock these tokens on network A and use them further. So when it comes to types of cross-chain solutions, there are, I think, tons of these, because this is also fresh and bleeding edge, that basically each of the solutions that is being created right now is something completely new and different. But I think that we can structure all these projects into two most important groups. So the first group is going to be centralized bridges and cross-chain solutions. So basically products that do not have any public blockchain that allows you to preview all the transactions and all the magic that is happening behind those two smart contracts that we have just discussed. And a wonderful example of such a product is Wormhole. And because of the fact that you don't have a side chain that needs to manage all these transactions, this brings you much lower complexity, but also lower security. The fact is that it usually doesn't require any token or coin because you don't have any blockchain attached to it. And what we see on the market right now is that most of these centralized solutions are basically moving towards the decentralized side. That's because of the nature of how it all works in Web3, right? So a great example of a centralized product is Axelar, where you have a sidechain that basically allows you to preview all the cross-chain transactions that are happening behind those two smart contracts that we have just given as an example. But because of the fact that it's a separate blockchain, you have much higher complexity, but at the same time you have higher security, and usually you have a token or a coin because, of course, you need to incentivize node operators to operate the nodes. So it's usually the easiest way is to produce money out of thin air, right? So this is how decentralized cross-chain solutions work. Here are some differences by courtesy of goodness UC.eth. And as you can see, in case of Axelar, you have around 75 node operators that manage the whole network. You can preview all the transactions in the blockchain, Axelar Blockchain Explorer. So basically, when a transaction goes through smart contract A, you can preview it, show up in the Axelar network, and then move to the network B. In case of Wormhole, you basically have a kind of guardian model. We as Token Guard, we also operate as a guardian of one cross-chain solution for a blockchain network. And this basically means that a team of 10 to 20 different companies is managing this cross-chain product, this bridge, by governing a multi-sig wallet where everybody agrees on the state of this cross-chain bridge. And these are the most important differences, other than there is no token and coin to shill for Wormhole currently. So when you get to their Telegram group, you can see like hundreds of messages of people asking where token or where Binance, right? So before we move further, what I would like to underline is that if you have a Web3 ecosystem and you manage a Web3 ecosystem as a product manager, growth manager, ecosystem lead, whatever, you want to have a thriving DeFi segment. Still, in Web3, DeFi produces around 90% of the volume, overall volume that happens in Web3. Even though that DeFi has around the same number of users as gaming segment, DeFi produces 90%, gaming segment produces around 6 to 7% of the volume. That's because usually you don't transfer $1 million to a gaming protocol to buy NFTs, armors, whatever there is in this protocol, right? So in order to have a high TVL that will support the demand for your underlying coin, you need to have a thriving DeFi segment. But in order to achieve that, you firstly need to have stablecoins. There is no way for Web3 ecosystem to basically build a thriving DeFi segment without stablecoins. And you need to remember that integrating Circle or Tether, it's not cheap. This is not for free. Basically, you need to outreach to these companies. They need to integrate your Web3 ecosystem. And doing that is a big hurdle for your Web3 ecosystem budget. So important thing is that with cross-chain solutions, and we're going to talk that in a second, with cross-chain solutions, you get an instant stablecoin integration because these stablecoins are going to show up on your network as wrapped USDC or wrapped USDT. And that is a very important thing to remember. And why are stablecoins important for DeFi growth? I guess everybody understands this, more or less, because of the volatility of native coins. Usually, if you have like a small Web3 network, it's going to be pretty volatile compared to USDC or USDT. So if you want anybody to invest in DeFi protocols inside this Web3 ecosystem, you need to give them an alternative solution to your volatile coin because they do not want to lose money on the speculative nature of your asset. So do you have any questions maybe about what I just said? Okay, so let's move on. So what we're going to look at today is an example of cross-chain traffic that is coming to Moonbeam. And why are we discussing Moonbeam? I believe that it's a great example because that was a network coming from a Polkadot ecosystem that once was pretty big. It had EVM virtual machine. It had very low gas costs compared to Ethereum. It gained a lot of momentum, but somehow at some point it lost its momentum. But currently, it's basically, this is true for most of the web3 ecosystems, so I wouldn't be very sad about it. But nevertheless, Moonbeam has free cross-chain solutions, like third-party cross-chain solutions, because there is also cross-chain messaging coming from Polkadot, but that's a different thing. So it has free cross-chain bridges, Wormhole Layer 0 and Axelar, with Wormhole being the most popular. It also has a DeFi segment of around 20 operative protocols, with the most important ones mentioned here. Moonwell is a DeFi lending protocol that is basically designed with or being cross-chain in mind because it's available on Moonbeam and Base. So we're going to take a look at StellaSwap, which is a totally native to Moonbeam product. So it doesn't operate on any other blockchain. It's only available on Moonbeam and usually has mostly Polkadot related assets and tokens. Some nice mint. So let's start with analyzing the data that we can take a look at when it comes to incoming traffic through Wormhole to Moonbeam and then StellaSwap. So StellaSwap currently has around $6 to $7 million of TVL, which is pretty small compared to, let's say, GMX or any bigger protocol. But what is really surprising if you take a look at StellaSwap's data, like this is the screen from our token guard application. We operate as a public good tool, free for everyone, so you can take a look at this on our website. Below the screenshot, you got a source. Yeah. So what is really surprising, if you take the last 3 months of wallet interactions with this protocol and sort it by the volume of this interaction, so basically the third column here, you can see that the top wallet has generated a volume of deposits of $15 million. And you're going to notice that 50% of the top value users are basically using Wormhole. These interactions on the right, they show all the other dApps that are being used by this wallet on Moonbeam network. And as you can see, 50% of these are using Wormhole. And of course, if you download the CS file, you're going to sum it all up. You'll see that this number, of course, it's kind of volatile, but it moves around 50% of the top 30% of wallets. Another really interesting insight, and that insight is basically true for all DeFi protocols, almost all DeFi protocols in Web3 space, is that around 5% of users are responsible for 80% of the volume of each of those DeFi protocols. So this kind of, brings to question whether it actually makes sense to invest in, for example, KOLs, marketing campaigns, or affiliate marketing campaigns that are targeted at regular users on Twitter or in other social media channels. Because if you have only a small group of very wealthy users that are generating most of your revenue, why not focus on these users and acquiring more of these users rather than focusing on small users that invest $100 or $10 in your protocol? And also an important note, interactions on the screen that we're discussing are based only on externally owned accounts triggered transactions. What this means is that many cross-chain solutions allow dApp builders to use their SDK to connect seamlessly so that when the user triggers a transaction at StellaSwap, he may not even know that he's using Wormhole behind it. This is how, for example, Li-Fi works, and it's a wonderful product, which is basically, I think, a unicorn already. But in this case, we're talking about direct interactions of wallets with Wormhole, which means that all these wallets that have this Wormhole icon here are basically manually sending the money to Moonbeam network and then investing it in the StellaSwap protocol. It's not under the hood usage of Wormhole. It's a direct usage of Wormhole by these wallets. So this is just the beginning, and it's really cool information for StellaSwap, and I think that StellaSwap should really be happy about Moonbeam investing into Wormhole integration. So let's get a little bit deeper. How it looks from the USD deposits volume perspective. So as you can see, around 70% of USD deposits is coming from Wormhole users, mostly from users who only use Wormhole and StellaSwap. Of course, there are some exceptions to this, but most of these USD volume is coming from these users. Regarding most popular tokens, 45% of deposits to StellaSwap are cross-chain tokens. And this is data for the last 3 months, pretty real-time data. And of course, these are not only Wormhole tokens, because you can see, I think 7th or 6th is Axelar USDC. So there are also other wrapped tokens coming from other bridges. But nevertheless, the cross-chain transactions and cross-chain exchange of assets is something that basically drives this protocol, because if it weren't for cross-chain tokens, we could safely assume that those 45% of deposits probably wouldn't happen, because we cannot compare it. So what about Moonbeam itself? Like how Wormhole actually influences the Moonbeam network? So what you have here is a list of top Moonbeam-only projects. So basically projects that do not exist on any other network. There is BMX, which is a perpetual DEX, pretty small protocol, but very fast growing. You can see the growth index 83, superb. And 90% of top wallets is using Wormhole. BeamSwap, 40% of top wallets is using Wormhole. And of course, Wormhole, where 100% of wallets is using Wormhole. There is also Everloot, which is a gaming product. In this case, the percentage of Wormhole users is much smaller. I think it was around 20%. There is StellaSwap and Solarflare, which doesn't have really much influence in here. But this is, of course, all kind of estimates that I'm showing. So let's take a look at detailed data. So within the last 3 months, Moonbeam had around 120,000 active users. So users that did some kind of interaction of the network, a transfer or interaction with a dApp. 72,000 of these users had no dApp activity, which means that they only use transfers or some kind of governance extrinsics needed for the DAO voting at Moonbeam network. Then there is 41,000 users that didn't use Wormhole or StellaSwap, and there is only 1,000, so basically 1% of users that used Wormhole and StellaSwap. And this 1% within the same time frame has generated around 75 to 80% of USD transfer volume on the Moonbeam network. So I think that pretty much sums up and confirms the thesis that in case of smaller Web3 ecosystems, which are kind of exotic to Ethereum users or to EVM users, having a cross-chain solution integrated into this exotic network is a must-have, because without it, you wouldn't even open your network to the external assets and external users. And of course, important thing here is that StellaSwap has a pretty big share in this volume, but Wormhole has around 60%, which means that Wormhole itself and apps that people use through wormhole generate most of this important for Moonbeam traffic. Of course, we could calculate the fees that are being generated to the ecosystem by all of this traffic, but usually these fees, they do not access more than tens of dollars, so it doesn't really make much sense. So yeah, as I already mentioned, Moonbeam is a very, very alternative coin right now. It had, I think, around $2 billion of market cap at some point. Right now, its market cap today is around $140 million, but its TVL is basically $40 million. So it's it's up to 15 times lower than Optimism, much lower than Arbitrum, and basically not comparable to Binance Smart Chain. Why do we mention these three other chains? Because we're going to take a look at how the traffic for these three chains basically looks for Wormhole as well. So knowing that Moonbeam TVL is 40 million, we could expect that the traffic of users transferring their assets through Wormhole to all of these four networks will be kind of similar. But it's basically not. So if you take a look at the data of how many users generate traffic for Wormhole on these four separate networks, you will see that 40% of new wallets, of new acquired wallets, are coming basically from Moonbeam. So Wormhole, and of course Wormhole supports many more chains than this, but it would basically be very hard to read here. So basically Moonbeam generates around 40% of new acquired wallets for Wormhole, and 50% of interactions within the last 3 months compared to these four chains. Yes, it is. Yes, yes. These are all new acquired wallets that are starting to use Wormhole product. So we don't differentiate here whether it's USDC, whether it's a different asset. We basically measure the number of new wallets that are starting to use Wormhole at this specific network. So we mentioned those smart contracts A and B. So these are all smart contracts A and B on those networks, and we measure how many new wallets interact with these smart contracts for the last 3 months. Doesn't matter the type of asset. And when it comes to TVL, it's also kind of surprising because, as we already said, Moonbeam currently has around $40 million of dollars. It had, sorry, by the end of June, around $40 million of TVL, and Wormhole itself generated 7 million of those 40, which is a lot, very, very a lot, right? So this again confirms the thesis that having a cross-chain solution on well-known cross-chain solution on an exotic web3 ecosystem such as Moonbeam is extremely important. So to sum it all up, who wins with Bridge? What we, I think, can safely assume, of course, because we don't have all the data coming from all the networks, from all the aggregated data wouldn't make much sense. What we want to see here is, what we want to get here is get an insight for a exotic new Web3 ecosystem that is emerging to help it grow. So who wins in such a case when smaller network using cross-chain solutions such as Wormhole or Axelar? So basically the smaller network, it gets an inflow of new active users, it gets a new source of liquidity and TVL, and most importantly, it gets a instant stablecoin integration, which I of integrating Tether and CERT. What the bigger network gets is access to new exotic assets that wouldn't basically be available for users on this network without the cross-chain solution, or for these users because of these exotic assets. And again, assets being deployed on the bigger network is a higher user risk because probably these assets are going to be more volatile than the bigger network itself. And you can basically see that on the Moonbeam's price chart. But it would be kind of surprising if everybody was winning. It's like, who loses here? Do you have an answer, maybe? Who loses in case of using cross-chain solutions? Like, where is the money moving from whom to bridges? Not really. Like, think about who was the first to give you a possibility to move money between blockchains. Perfect. Yes, that is the exact answer. So centralized exchanges are the biggest loser when you have cross-chain solutions available on the market. And that's because centralized exchanges were the first to actually allow you to quickly move money between different networks. So you could exchange coin A to fiat money or to stable coin, and then exchange it to coin B and move it on the network B within a matter of few minutes. But the fact is that using centralized exchanges is basically extremely expensive. If you're going to transfer money from Ethereum to Polkadot, you're going to pay around 4-5% of fees based on, depending on the centralized exchange that you're using. So this is more or less true for Kraken. Of course, you can use Gate.io, or you can use OKX, or you can use MaxC. But the fact is that we have already seen that big investors, whales, digital asset funds, they are transferring more than $1 million at once, for example. So you can either minimize the risk of losing that money, and then you're going to pay a lot in fees for centralized exchanges. You can minimize the fee, but then you have a higher risk of losing money, for example, at MaxC. Our company, personally, we had a situation with Kraken wallet at Polkadot where we lost almost 1 million zlotys, and basically Kraken retrieved those money for us. And it was their fault because they didn't integrate Polkadot extrinsics properly, and our developers basically were talking with their developers to retrieve the money. So this is what you get when you pay like 4 or 5% of fees. But if you pay 1-2% of fees at MaxC, you may be up in that situation. So then most of these users are going to use cross-chain solutions such as Wormhole, XLR, Layer 0, because basically they are cheap and they are safe. Thank you very much. I'm not sure if you have any questions. But I know that we're out of time, so do you have any questions, maybe? Oh, really? Yes? Okay. So I made a mistake. Really, thank you for mentioning that. So basically, yeah, they're probably going to move to the decentralized model because of that, and they had a TG. Okay. So thanks for mentioning that. Yeah, so moving to the decentralized model, probably. Thanks. Okay, cool. Thank you very much.